We are here to learn, elevate our industry, and make sure that you all can step forward with the tools, the foundation, and the importance of understanding how to run a business. So we build this community not because we're looking to bring you here to a different place each time, but we want to build a community where you can learn from one another. Don't step backwards, always step forward. Because when you step forward, there's something new. There's a door to open, and something behind that door or in front of you is something magical.
Scared to risk it all, take a chance, close my eyes and try again.
I want you to jump into joy. I want you to give it all. Give it all to yourself. Take it all for yourself. Seriously, no, seriously, take all you can, so you will. So you can say, you did it all.
Vulnerability is truly the greatest sales tool there is. And guess what? There's no subscription fee. You don't have to pay anyone to buy this new tool. It's yours. You have it.
Messy is good. Tears are wonderful. Laughter is great. All of it takes courage.
Life is too short to be little. You must enlarge your imagination. That's what we do for a living, and then act upon it. The journey has much more value than the simplicity of making it to the destination.
Today I seek to make a difference in your heart. I seek to shift something in you.
Dream out loud. Dream out loud as long as you can.
They're your dreams. Make them happen.
There's something in this room that cannot be found anywhere else.
What we can do as educators in the wedding industry is really keep it abreast of everything that's going on in technology to make sure that your businesses are really thriving.
David Tutera is a special human being. And if you believe that with me, and you have felt what I have felt at DTE for the past 3 days, and you love them as much as I do, please rise up and give them a round of amazing applause.
The joy is in the journey, which ultimately is the destination we all need to be on. Tonight is about the journey, the love, and the joy.
To find out where we're at, where do we want to go? How do we want to show up in this world, and how do we want to feel?
We are here together to support one another.
Yoga has no right or wrong moves. It has no right or wrong postures. It's about an experience.
Every minute, each day, each evening continues to crescendo into a beautiful day.
Continuing your education happens in rooms like this.
I have always believed that the David Tutera experience is a combination of going to school and going to church.
David, thank you for creating this space.
Inside of each of us, you have the ability to make a difference.
This is an incredibly emotional and powerful experience here.
It's all of you that make me love what we do and why we are here today.
I want you to say it out loud. I still feel alive.
Watching these videos will put you right in a mood, right?
So inspiring.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see everyone. Glad for everyone to join us on Facebook and Instagram and all the other platforms today. Nora, thank you for joining David and I as well.
I'm so excited to be here with you today.
We're thrilled to have you. You've got so much to share with us and so much to share with our audience that I think it's one of the moments that's very important. It's a topic that, as you know and we know, can either destroy or actually accelerate our companies and our businesses with success. So we're really delighted that you joined us. We've been spending a lot of time with you, getting to know you, and presenting you to our family, we call them, because they are all here to listen, to learn, to elevate, and make sure that they have the tools that they need to be able to be more successful. So I'm going to use a sort of a metaphor right now for you, Nora. I'm going to make you think as if you have your own toolbox in front of you, and you're going to pull out all the tools, and you're going to showcase to everybody all that they need to know and how easy it can be and not be so challenging and difficult.
Well, I'm thrilled to be a part of the family, and I have many tools in my back pocket, and I'm super excited to share them with all of you.
Wonderful.
So, should we dive in?
Yeah, my God, the word contracts. I think that makes people feel really nervous when they have to get to that point, right?
Totally.
You say,
totally.
Joey, here it's yours.
So, just to start, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I am just giving you advice and suggestions from my tenure in the wedding industry. I've been at it for 21 years now as a past planner and now on the tech side with Rock Paper Coin. And I will tell you that every single wedding pro I know has expanded their contract based on the amount of time they have been in business, just because crazy things happen, and that's a great opportunity to make changes to your contract to protect yourself, to make sure those don't happen again. So a contract is nothing to be afraid of. It's a working document. So all because you've created one doesn't mean it has to stay that way forever. You can always make changes. So Be brave, stick with your contract. It's there for a reason. So if you have a problem with a client and they've signed a contract, you don't have to waffle. They've signed it, you've made an agreement, and that's what sticks. So don't feel like because someone's asking, you have to go against your contract. I think people get scared when they hear contracts or I'm going to talk to my lawyer or something like that. But as a business owner, you really have to be brave and stick with it. So let's jump in. So we're going to talk about today 5 things to always include in your contracts. And this could be related to the wedding industry, events, creative, all sorts of different industries. So kind of apply what I'm saying to your own specialty. Okay, so first off, I'm not even going to include this in one of my 5 things because there were so many to choose from, but you have to include basic information, right? Who are you providing the service to? What is the date of service? What is their contact information? What's the date that they're signing the contract? So these are all like super basic things that are just the backbone of your contract. So from there, if we could get the next slide. From there, the payment details. So a lot of back and forth about contracts comes about the payments. So we want to get this straight and make it super, super clear for everybody. So what is the price of the product or the service that you're providing? Are you asking for a retainer? I have been told, I've been given legal advice that you should not use the term deposit, but instead retainer. It'll hold up better in the court of law. And Leah and Kumbi, who will be joining us in a little bit, might be able to give us a little more insight into that. But your deposit for services, it should be a retainer. Also due dates. So how are you going to split up your payments? Are you expecting half up front and half 2 weeks before the service? Are you splitting it up 10 different ways? However you want to do it, make it very clear on that contract and what the amount is and what the due dates are. Also, what are extra costs? David, I'm sure you have some crazy stories, but in my wedding planning days, I was asked for all kinds of different things. I want to split my deposit up in 18 different payments on different due dates or whatever. So clarify that, clarify how you will accept payment. Is it credit card? Is it rock, paper, coin? Is it cash? Whatever you're doing, make that easy and clear. And then also, what happens if a payment is late? Does it mean the contract is null and void? Does it mean that you're not going to show up to the event? Or does it mean that they get a 10-day grace period? Whatever that is, just lay it all out for them. Okay, next slide. The scope of services. This is a big one. So if you're providing a service, the number of hours that are included, whether that's before the service takes place, on the day of the service, whether it's a wedding, a special event, maybe styling services, whatever it is that you're offering. Also, how many staff members are included? So is there a team that comes with you? How many are there? And you don't really have to go so deep into that, like their experience or anything like that. Just like 1 wedding planner and 5 assistants will be on site. Services included. So you break down what your package or your service includes, and then what's excluded. And I almost think this is as important. There was one time I was asked to mow somebody's lawn as being part of being their wedding planner. There are so many crazy random things that people will ask for. And of course, you can say no. And if they have a problem with it, they can look at your contract. David, do you have any funny stories about crazy asks?
I do, and I will have several throughout our time together, but one that just popped up in mind that we were hired by a client, and I share no names, never, ever, ever. Sometimes a little, but in this situation, it was a very, very large client, a very wealthy client that was looking for a wedding for her daughter, and she signed a contract to secure our services as the planner and designer. So contracts were in place, everything was signed as all the things that you're sharing with everyone that's listening now. And then as we were moving forward, it was time for her to sign contracts for the individual vendors that were needed to obviously support the roles of what needed to be executed: tent, entertainment, catering. We did a tasting with her with a potential caterer. The list was endless. So the last time I saw her, I came in with my team, we sat down with her, we laid out a plethora of contracts because we were preparing them all because she wanted to see them all at the same time. And she looked at them all and she simply looked right at me and said, I'm not signing any of these. I'm not signing any of these contracts. Because her reply was, all of this is too expensive. So instead of just saying, let's negotiate or let's look for a lesser vendor in price, she dismissed the entire project. And we left. We left the meeting, which was over. She clearly made it over. And I got a phone call about a week later from her personal assistant saying that the event is off. There's no wedding. So what the point of this story is that contracts have to be signed, not just with us as the planner, but with all of our contracts with all of our vendors. So we have to make sure that we're protecting our vendors as well as protecting ourselves. Um, Without contracts, as far as I'm concerned, Nora, there's no business deal. There's no connection, and there's no moving forward with anything. And so many times we speak in our mentorship program about this, and we hear so many times that so many people who are so eager to get a job and get a project that they won't sign contracts. They'll move forward to the first step and give too much information to a potential client and wind up losing all that time because they never follow through with the contract because A, they can't possibly afford it. They may not possibly be real for that matter. And sometimes they just back out because they feel like it's just too expensive.
Yeah,
So
without a
protect yourself.
contract or a retainer, you shouldn't be doing anything, not even saving the date, in my opinion.
Don't even answer the phone without a contract.
I love it. Okay, so some other things to include if we could go to number 3. Okay, cancellation and postponement. So if COVID taught us anything, you have to protect yourself because, another pandemic could happen. God willing, we don't have to deal with that again. But there are things that come up. There are, military deployments. People get sick. People break up. People just change their minds on things. So, and that is totally fine as long as it's all laid out in your contract. So they know what to expect and you know how to deal with it. If at Bridal Bliss, my planning company, if couples want to cancel, they can, but all payments that have been made are non-refundable and they have to cancel within 4 months of their event. So if they cancel in less than 4 months, then the entire payment is due because what planner or photographer or anyone is going to book a wedding that quickly. So that's just there to cover us. And then postponements. This was another hot ticket item in COVID. A lot of people did not have this in their contract and really suffered from it. But know what your plan is with postponements. At Bridal Bliss, we charge a 20% postponement fee, and they have to choose a date within 6 months of their wedding. And it has to be a date that works for both parties. So if we're booked, we're not on the hook for it, but ideally they can find a date where everyone's available. And this is not just planners. This is all vendor types should have a postponement and cancellation clause in place on their contract. Another piece is what happens if your company has to cancel? Do you give all retainers back? Do you, there are many different things you can do. You can also have the option of having one of your associates fill in for you if you're not available on the date. So whatever it is, just lay that out in that clause in your contract. And one piece of all of this, like we talked about at the beginning, contracts can be scary, especially if you're new, especially if you have no background of this. Most of us creatives don't have a legal background, so that's not an expectation. So there are a couple different ways to go about it. You can hire an attorney, a local attorney, to just do something from start to finish for you and update it as needed. or you can purchase a template. So there are many different places you can do that. I personally love Legally Set, who I will introduce you to here in a moment. But what they do is have a variety of different contract templates depending on what type of vendor or business you have. And it's a great backbone to get started on your contract. So it'll have all of the basic clauses for you. One huge recommendation I have is to take that and take it to a local attorney, someone that's in your state, because change laws are different state by state. So you want to make sure that everything you have in that contract is covered for your state or is legal in your state. But you'll have a really great backbone, and it's going to cost you much less money to start with a template and then have an attorney review it than vice versa. So the
Nora,
whole point. Oh yes.
can I interrupt you just for a quick second?
Of course.
Because this is also important, and I think that when we as creative people in an industry that creates unique experiences, when going to a lawyer, it's really also important that they understand the dynamics of what our business is. So I know that you know that. I just want everyone that's listening right now to know, just don't walk in and say, I need a contract for my services for my client. I think it's really important that we actually sometimes have to educate an attorney, because most of the attorneys that are creating legally contracts are not understanding the plethora of dynamics that our industry takes on. So that's really, really going to be helpful when they build a contract for you or bring you a template, and that's, which is also very important. But again, sharing who you are, what you do, is your scope of work geographically, is your scope of work internationally. I think that's really important when spending that money to get that template and get that contract.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it's explaining to your attorney your like step by step process of how you work is super important. Like as planners, some up and have their clients pay them back, which I absolutely do not recommend, but it happens. So that's something that needs to be in the contract. So you have a way to get them to pay you back if you lose any leverage. So just like little things like that, walk them through the process, and then your lawyer will be able to put it in the correct verbiage, and you'll be good to go. So next slide, please. So the whole point of a contract is to protect yourself from a variety of different things, but also the unthinkable. So number 4, we are talking about, this might sound familiar, but if we could go to the next slide. Um, Oh, there is Oduberg. So actually, I'll just introduce them now. So Leah and Kuhnby, if we could bring them up, are friends of mine and two amazing attorneys. Leah was a planner in a past life, and she truly understands the trials and tribulations of being a part of the wedding industry and has a law degree. So they have come together to form Oduberg, and Legally Set is their site to purchase the templates that we chatted about. And they have really amazing options. We use them ourselves at Bridal Bliss. Here is a QR code if you want to get a discount on your templates. But Leah and Kuhnby, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
So we want to talk about the unthinkable. So if we could go to number 4. We are talking about acts of God, pandemics, weather, government shutdowns, and basically anything out of our control as business owners. So, talk to us about that. What do you need to include in your contract?
Okay, so with this one, I think anybody that was operating, especially during the dreaded 2020, 2021 season of, stuff happening, knows very intimately what a force majeure is, or at least first, maybe even if it was the first time you were hearing it, it was probably not a good idea as to why you were hearing those words in the first place. So all those things that you've mentioned, basically, like you said, it's the unthinkable or the unexpected. And I think that's the general guiding force here. Like, what happens when something happens that's completely out of like your control or your expectation window, basically, and now making it impossible or very incredibly hard for your event or the thing that you have contracted for to actually happen. Which is, so that's what a lot of lawyers will say. Those things that everybody thinks is just legalese, like, those things that you have in your contract for a rainy day. Well, that rainy day is the force majeure clause. And that clause basically says a major force has happened, an unexpected thing has happened, like there are COVID government lockdowns that happened when it was unexpected, when we didn't know what was happening. There was uncertainty as to how or when you would be able to have an actual event. The force majeure is there to protect, in most cases and in most both parties. Basically, it states, first of all, what a force majeure clause is. I think that's the biggest thing here, is like defining it. What does it cover? Does it cover acts of God, acts of man, government lockdowns, which was actually the actual force majeure in a lot of cases, because the government basically locked down and you couldn't have an event happen in a space, like it was literally out of your hands. What happens if there's an infestation of some kind, like a pandemic or an epidemic? Those kind of things in certain areas of the country, weather situations in which there's, like, for instance, maybe uninhabitable air quality or something like that. I know in Colorado and in the mountain areas that's a thing, or the fire situation. It basically dictates what the event looks like. Most importantly, it also dictates what happens. That's the part that a lot of people seem to always forget. What happens? Yes, we've defined it. It looks cute. It sounds great. But what then what? Like, what happens next? And that's what a force majeure clause will do. It would basically be that space in your contract that tells you what happens. When do you have to notify the other party, like, oh my God, my house is on fire? Or maybe, like, I don't know what the situation is, but oh my God, this is happening. This is described in my account. Like, when would I be able to cure it? When can we postpone? Those kind of conversations. And then what happens if there's a postponement can't happen? Like, what happens if there's no date or possibility? Like, for instance, like, I don't want to bring up any kind of situation here that might, like, be different for other people, but what happens there? So force majeure clause will basically dictate what happens in the event that there's a surprising force that has made it hard for somebody to be able to carry out the terms of this contract. When do they have to notify the other party? Are they excused? And when can they cure this? And what happens if they're not able to do that? Those are the kind of things in the contract that could end up saving, one, the vendor a lot of money and not having to refund everything or something like that, or also dictate in the event that you, the vendor, or even if you are the couple, it would dictate what happens next. It's really one of those clauses that sounds like a lot of French, and I don't know why it's in there. But then we all found out in 2020, 2021, it could be the difference between keeping your business or losing your business.
Yep, I totally agree. There was so much talk about force majeure in 2020, and many people had never heard of it before. And so now it's in pretty much everyone's contract, and if not, it definitely should be. Okay, a couple more questions for you. If we could go to the next slide.
Up one thing, Nora. I just wanted
Oh,
to
yeah.
share, going back to force majeure, which is so important and so necessary and so irresponsible if you don't have it in your contract. But in situations in the past that have happened to us over my career, is that when something has been canceled for the reasons of whether, not pandemic, but we'll use it as an example because it's obvious, it's happened recently, is that you can also, there is the possibility of going to all of your vendors, one by one, and having that conversation and saying, we've got the client who's still interested. We're looking for a new date. We're not trying to have you lose your money. We're trying to make this happen. And I would tell you, out of the probably 4 or 5 times this has happened to me when I was living in New York City, everybody came together to make it work on a new date, that is, with a possibly a new venue. So I don't want people to panic and go, oh my God, I've lost everything. Even though with the clause that's in there, which is necessary, you can do the right thing by speaking to everyone and communicating with them. And I always say our industry has to communicate, because if we don't, you're going to lose your money, or you're not going to be able to move forward with the project because you haven't taken the chance to see maybe everybody wants to get involved. And here's the interesting thing, everyone that's watching and listening to us today about contracts, is that the communication is so much more valuable, because you'd be surprised that people who own businesses actually want to help the people that want to get married or want to have a celebration, and they step up. So don't assume that they're going to back out.
Go one level deeper though, David, because You said communication. Communication is more than just sending an email. You always talk about that.
I always
You
say,
need to pick
get
up
on the phone. Get on the phone. Joey says to me all the time also, he says, no one's answering we're not getting emails that are answered by people that work for us. Pick the phone up. And when I call and I pick the phone up and I call somebody, and I'm not saying that's because it's David Tutera, I'm not. But the point is that the owner of the company has a more powerful response and a more powerful ability to get them to hear and listen to you. If you're getting a low-key person on the totem pole calling to say, can you fix this? Can we make this work? It typically doesn't happen. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you. That's a good point.
Well, the other point with that is when it comes to contracts, when it comes to clauses, I think that get misunderstood, or just contracts in general where you have comments back and forth, a best practice, you can put it all in email because it's good to have it in writing, but then do the next step of have a phone call to talk through what that means so both sides come to an agreement, because sometimes even though it's in writing, it can be misinterpreted.
Yeah, we always, whether it's contract related or not, at Bridal Bliss, they always follow up with an email after a meeting, after a conversation, just so everything is on paper and there's something that you can look to if there's ever a problem, or they're saying you didn't respond to something or whatever it is, you have an email to go back to say, actually, it's right here, and you responded to it. Okay, let's talk about lawsuits. So again, this is rare and hopefully you never have to deal with it, but it's something that can happen. And so your contract is there to help you out in this situation. So Leah and Kumbi, we went over this a tiny bit, but can you share a little bit more about why it's important to note the state that you're located in and like what happens with different lawyer fees during a lawsuit?
Yeah, depending on the state, it sort of dictates what you can claim responsibility for or disclaim responsibility for in your contract. And so you might in your contract say you're not responsible for certain things, but if that's not permitted in your state, you might find that you are ultimately paying for something that you hadn't anticipated because of the state law. There's also some concepts state by state that may be enforceable, may not be enforceable. There's particular ways that courts in state want to see specific clauses written. And I see you have indemnification here. And I know we're in New York State, and New York courts have a very particular way that they want your indemnification provision worded for it to be enforceable. And so that's the idea. Everybody should take their, if you get a template, you should take your contract to a local attorney who knows those state specific quirks and differences and can just make sure the contract is in compliance with the state law.
Can you just explain, like, very simply what indemnification is?
I could try. So indemnification is an agreement in a contract. It's an agreement. One person who we're
Nora, can you hear her?
Oh, am I frozen?
We lost you for a sec. Will you say that again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it's an agreement in a contract where one person agrees to compensate the other person for any loss that that person suffers from a third party or from the indemnitor. So a great example, if you're a wedding planner, let's say the DJ's equipment gets damaged and the DJ, and it's no fault of the planner.
Oh gosh.
It's a Wi-Fi challenge day.
Oh, no.
I could for a second, if we unfreeze her, I want to talk about what this is actually an exact topic of an example of what we're referring to, the indemnification of from an attorney in a contract is We had this is several years ago. We had a wedding that was taking place in Asia. We were hired, flew out, met the client, prepared the details for from an attorney, and the wedding was about a week and a half out for us to then get on the plane. So if you think about it, we were flying from New York. I lived in New York at the time, and in Singapore is not a it's not a quick trip away, and the tickets are very expensive. And in our contract, all travel, all expenses, all hotels are all part of the contract that the client's responsible for that. A week and a half out, we did not have the final payment for the event, and we did not have tickets in hand that were purchased by the client for us to get on a plane to get to Singapore. So the problem here, what happened was, I spoke to my attorneys in New York, and they said, you cannot go on the plane. You cannot get on a flight and go to a project that you haven't been paid for, and you're putting out and laying out money for tickets, which are expensive to fly to Asia, let alone the hotel fees. Fast forward, I organized everything from the state of New York with the vendor in Singapore, told them I would not be coming because the contract was not fulfilled, and made sure everything took place. Fast forward months later, I get sued. I get sued by the bride that I didn't follow through with my services. Well, it turned into a very big deal, turned into a very expensive situation. Winds up that we wind up in mediation, which was my choice. So we wound up in a mediation scenario, and it cost me money. And it cost me money because it was handled inaccurately from the client side, but we had an American attorney who is eager to make a big statement on his career, which became newsworthy. So it was not the best scenario for us, but the point is you have to be very aware of making sure you put space and time for your client to pay you in advance, not a week and a half before, especially when you're going across the world. So just be very aware of when time is ticking away and what can and cannot happen.
And so
And
that's
also,
a legal question. When you come, it's the next one of note your state. So do we note the state that our contract is written from? So we're a California business, so we wanted California to be our jurisdiction, or do we do it wherever the wedding is held?
Ideally, you want it where your company is based.
okay.
So that way, if you have to go to court, it's more convenient for you and you're governed by the laws that you know.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Phew. Okay, a couple more things. So I know we've hit our 5 points, but I couldn't stop there. I had to throw in a few more. So if we could go to the next slide. A couple other things to include, a photo release. Being able to share photos from a wedding or a project is so important for your business. So you want to be able to have that up front. So once you get the images, you can share them freely or use them in your promotions or marketing however you want. Also, a harassment-free environment. And it's sad that this has to be on a contract, but sometimes you're not treated well and you should not be okay with that. So in our clause, it has something about not only having a harassment-free environment from our clients, but also their guests, their wedding party, their family members. If someone is being inappropriate or speaking to my team inappropriately, they have the right to give one warning, and if it doesn't stop, then they can leave, and all payments are still due as normal. Also a decision maker. So with wedding planning specifically, this has been really great because a lot of people are involved in planning a wedding. Sometimes it's the couple, sometimes it's the entire family, and there's a lot of back and forth and nobody can decide on anything. So if we have one person named as the decision maker, we know that we can go forward with whatever he or she or they say. So that's been a helpful piece in our contract that's pretty new. Also, ghosting. You talked about this, David. If somebody stops responding to you, whether you've tried email or phone or text, and they're not responding, you can't do your job. So you have to be able to to get out of the contract. And so Leah gave me some good wording for that recently. And then also insurance. So we will only work with other vendors that have insurance and a business license. So I think that's important, but it's really up to you if one or both of those need to be a requirement. Next page, please. Some other things. Okay, so your contract shouldn't only cover you and your company, but your entire team. So anyone that works for you needs to be covered under your contract. And you should have the right in your contract to substitute a replacement. So you see this with photographers a lot. If they get sick or are needed somewhere else, they can find another photographer with kind of the same style and level of experience and substitute that person in. Or if you're a wedding planner with lots of different planners on your team, someone gets sick, a new planner can come in with no penalty to you. Also damaged goods. So if you are, say you are a planner that provides rentals and some of those rentals get damaged, you can be reimbursed for the cost of those. And one last one that I think is super important is not being held liable for the actions of other vendors. So even though you're the planner and you've maybe recommended a florist or a caterer and maybe they don't show, maybe they run out of food, maybe something happens, that's not your fault. So the client can't come after you if something happens on their end. Leah, do you have anything to add to those?
That last one is incredibly important because it does happen. A lot of what you just said, it does happen. And it is not in the hands of us as planners to be able to fix that because it's the responsibility of their contract that they were supposed to provide. That's so important, everyone listening.
Yeah, and couples, like if something like that happens, they're mad and they have every right to be upset. But at that point, sometimes they just want their money back, regardless of where it comes from. So it should not come from you. It was not your mistake. So, okay, next slide, please. So I think it's really important, and Kumbi and Leah, let me know what you think here, but e-signature is a really great way to accept your signed contracts. So don't send a Word doc, don't send a PDF and expect people to print it, sign it, scan it, and send it back to you. Nobody has the patience for that. If you use a platform that sends out contracts that allows them to click a button, sign, and be done, first of all, it's going to make your life easier. You can automate the process. You will have an online record of the signed contract, and the platform will track IP addresses, which basically will protect you if you have to present the contract in a court of law. It just tracks it and proves that the person that signed it is the person that they said they were. So anything else with e-signatures, Kunbi and Leah?
I think you hit the highlights.
You definitely did. I think people are always concerned. This is a question that we've gotten quite a bit. Like, oh, are e-signatures like valid, and are they? Can you use them in a court of law? And the truth is, yes. And that's the great thing, like you mentioned, is the IP address, is being able to track those things. It doesn't mean that you can have wet signatures as well. Wet signatures being like somebody live signs the agreement in person or prints it out, but the convenience of an e-signature now is just great. Yes, like DocuSign, someone just asked.
So, do you ever get the question, or I guess I have this question, if someone takes a contract and basically types out their name and saves it as like a PDF, is that considered a signature or no?
It is when if they're the ones that have it and are applying it to the contract, it's considered a signature.
Gotcha. Got it. Okay, cool. Okay, next slide, please. So that brings us to Rock Paper Coin. And Rock Paper Coin, I'm a co-founder in the company and built it after my experience in the wedding industry because we could not find software that understand how the wedding world turned and really helped us with our processes. So with Rock Paper Coin, we do payments, we do shared documents, but we also do contracts. So you, as whether you're in the wedding industry or not, can save templates of your contracts, or you can upload a contract, mark it up, and then send it to your client. And what happens is they will receive an email. They click the link, they fill in whatever you've assigned to them, and then they sign it. And we track the IP address, we save it in perpetuity. You can export if needed, but we have really tried our best to make the process as easy as possible, and we automate all the reminders for due dates and anything that's coming up, and really allow the planner, the vendors, and the clients to all communicate through the platform. So that's just a little bit about us, and we're proud to be David and Joey's preferred payment and contract provider. So please check us out. We do have, we will share at the very end a free lifetime membership to Rock Paper Coin and a promo code if you want to give us a try. But before we get there, should we share the challenge? David and Joey? Okay,
Yes.
so we want all of you to review your contract. If you don't have a contract, go check out Legally Set. But add one of the clauses that we talked about today that you might be missing in your contract. And the second piece of that is get set up to send digital contracts. So whether that's through Rock Paper Coin or another service, just sign up and send all of your contracts digitally so you can get that digital signature. Both of our handles are below, so follow us on Instagram and just comment on the link that you're on now and tell us how you're doing and what you've done. And we're excited to see what you all do.
That's great, Nora. Thank you.
If we could just get the next slide. Last slide. There we go. So we're going to take questions for you. Here's a QR code for a free year on Rock Paper Coin if you want to give us a try. We do free white glove onboarding, so we make the process super, super easy. But along with this, we will be giving away a free lifetime membership to Rock Paper Coin, so you can use it to your heart's content. And then Kunbi and Leah are giving away a free download of one of their contract templates and 20% off templates for everybody. And we're going to post those links below.
Thank you for that.
Should we take some questions?
Yeah,
We'd love that. The questions would be great.
See, how do you truly go about getting the rest of your money if they cancel within 4 months of their wedding or event? Leah and Kunbi might have a better answer to this. At Bridal Bliss, we've never had a problem. We've had so few people cancel that soon before their wedding, and when they do, they've paid no problem. So, what's the recourse, Kunbi and Leah?
The first thing to do, well, honestly, the first thing to do is to get an attorney to help you if you do run into that situation. But what's going to happen is you're going to prepare some formal correspondence to the client, citing the terms in your contract, the specific sections that states that they need to be returning the money. If that doesn't work, then ultimately you're probably looking at something like small claims court to get your money back.
What I've done in the past that has been worked fairly easy when this has happened, I just create a cancellation amendment when they call us or let us know that they can't proceed with the event and it's going to be canceled. We have the discussion, and then I prepare for them the amendment that references that cancellation clause in the contract. And so then this would be the amount that is due per the contract, and send an invoice with that. And it's typically been pretty good. I haven't run into any issues from my background in collections way back when. If I ran into a situation where they didn't respond to that, then you have to treat it like collections and follow up with that person that this was a contract we had. I understand you don't want to have the event. However, these were the terms that we agreed to and continue that effort for a while. And then you might have to go and say, well, do we need to get legal fees and attorneys involved or collection companies involved if they're not going to work with you? But I think if, again, communication, not just email, but phone communication is key to understand why they aren't paying this to you, this cancellation fee that's owed. Do they feel that you had something to do with it? And talk through whatever challenges those might be. But again, that's where we started here with contracts. Contracts are your backbone. You agree to these terms, so here it is.
We at Bridal Bliss, we had a couple reimbursements that we needed to get paid after the wedding, and they didn't pay them. And so we also had to go to the small claims court, but it's much less scary than it sounds. The one thing, at least in Oregon, I don't know how this is anywhere else, you have to report the claim in the county that the person who you're claiming from is located in. So if you're working with somebody out of state, and Kunbi and Leah, you can tell us more about this, but there was one person that thankfully it was a small sum of money, but they were located so far away that it was more worth my while to just let it go than fly there and have to come back later. But is that everywhere or just in Oregon?
I don't, since we only know the law of the states where we're licensed to practice, we honestly don't know if it's the same everywhere.
Yeah, but you just made a great point. Like sometimes you have to obviously weigh the options here. And we always say this, whether it's a business decision or a legal decision. And I know Joey even touched on that as well. Like you weigh it and see whether or not it's worth, chasing a certain amount or it's going to cost you more money. But one thing I did want to mention, and I think that we should all, like the first things first when anything like this happens is for you, first of all, to go back to see what you signed. A lot of people make the biggest mistakes legally happen when like your emotions are initially very high and you're like kind of almost reflex reacting. That's where a lot of people really mess up, because then they start like agreeing to things or even saying that they're going to like offering things when you haven't even like just take a minute and go back into your agreement and see what it says and make sure you understand it before you start doing anything. And then that way it would even help guide your communication and how you want to kind of go about it. And see, otherwise you sending out one of those really aggressive or hateful emails immediately, or the other way around where you're like really begging, either way, either side of that coin could really be a bad idea, especially before you've had enough time to think. And in the case where you choose to speak to an attorney, always a great idea. You want to make sure you've done all of that and done everything first before you then be like, okay, I'm in a place and in position to have this conversation. Let's talk about it. And then we start sending out things.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally
Don't let the emotion take over and drive on either direction, that anger direction or art direction, where you loved this client that you were working with. And so then they're coming to you to cancel. And then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, that's all going to be okay. Yeah, it's all fine. We'll be fine. And then 2 weeks later, you try to send them a bill and they're like, wait a minute. You told me on the phone everything was fine and we were good. So where's this bill coming from?
Exactly.
Okay. Next question from Marcy. Hi, Marcy. As the retailer, I always countersign a contract after the client or buyer signs. Is there ever a time the planner or vendor should sign a contract before a client? So on Rock Paper Coin, we have the option of countersigning. It's part of the workflow of our contract. So as you create the contract or go through a template, you have the option to countersign, put your signature there. So when the client signs and fills in everything that you have required from them, it's a completed contract, and you would get a link and it would be on your portal. So everything is all there and accessible from you.
I want to just jump in for a quick second. We're talking so in depth, of course, which is the topic of contracts. I want to remind everyone in our industry, contracts are important, but before we actually get to the contract, I've been saying this probably for more than people want to ever hear, you need to assess the value of what you are worth. So when you're figuring out what your fee should be, do not underestimate the amount of time, energy, creativity, taking away from your children and your family and yourself You need to make sure once you put that number on your contract, that's your number. You can't go backwards or forwards unless they add something, of course, later with an addendum. But here's the deal. Make sure you are worthy of the amount that you need to charge. Our industry as a whole, which I have been talking about on many stages across the globe, I've shared with everyone, you need to charge more. We are worth it, we are valuable, and they need us. So make sure once that number gets onto your contract, you're proud of that number and even more prouder that they signed the contract with your increased amount that you chose.
Amen. I think so many wedding pros are underpriced and undervalue themselves. And I think it's important that vendors of the same category communicate and talk to each other. I've reached out to other planners that are local that we've heard they're charging like $1,000 for a service that we charge $6,000 for. So, they might be new. There's a multitude of reasons, but they might just not know that they're totally undervaluing themselves and kind of bringing down the industry as a whole. Because if you're a client and you talk to 3 planners that are charging $1,000 for the same service that someone is charging 4 times that, you're going to think that the norm is that lower end. So people don't necessarily think about how much time they're spending on these weddings, how much money goes into it just on the back end, whether you're paying rent or your supplies or your assistants. Just like coming up with a number that you think is fair, it doesn't work that way. You have to really look at your costs and how much business you're doing. Are you booked every single weekend? Then you can raise your price because you're probably turning business away. So there are a lot of different ways to get that number, but I agree, David. Most people I think are underpriced and undervaluing what they're doing.
Yeah. The other thing that is important to think, I think, with the contract that we didn't talk about here, but we actually talked about last night on our mentorship call, and this whole month we focused on it, was don't just send a contract. Introduce the contract. So just like you would with your proposal, introduce it with a cover letter of attached is the contract that reviews X, Y, and Z. Set everything out there, your big bullet point highlights to it. So it's not just this document that they're getting, but it's a document that they're receiving to understand this is what your relationship to create this project is built off of. So this is where your scope of services will hopefully be referenced in there as well, whether that's through an exhibit or elsewhere, referring back to something. So,
and we're in a business of creating celebrations, which is emotional, which obviously is what we do, correct? Whether it's even a corporate client or a social. So going back to just piggyback on what Joey just said is that in a cover letter that's written from us, whether it come from myself or Joey, it's emotional. It is connecting us to them. It's letting them know the type of person that we are and what we are looking forward to accomplish for them. And we want them to fall in love with us in a cover letter. It's our only way of expressing to them why we love what we do, what we will do for you to make an experience be one of a kind and unique. And that starts to create the elevation of how you begin to charge more money by giving them the story of what we do. So don't just say, hi, this is David Tuchera. I'm interested in working for you. And what's the date of your event and what are all the details that you need? That is like the last thing you should do. The first thing is you want them to fall possibly most likely in love with your cover letter, that they get to the contract, read all the information, and then hire you. So important. Without a great cover letter, you are nothing.
Yep. I also love the idea of embedding videos in that email so they can actually see you talking to them and really get that personal feel. So have your email, put in your video, and when you start with that personal touch, it allows you to automate more of the onboarding process. But they've already fallen in love with you. They already trust you. You've made their life easier from the very first step, from meeting you to booking to signing to paying. So you build that trust early on, and it's going to be a good experience all around.
Yeah. Let's take this final question from Don for our session today, because I think it ties everything together. She has the question related to, if you use templates, do you still need a local attorney to go over contracts? And I think you touched on that a little bit. But yeah, the template's your base, but you shouldn't let that be all. You should still talk to the local attorney. You should look at your experiences with past clients. What challenges might have you had? Does this template document address that? Does this template document address specifically to the services you provide? So that's where I believe a conversation with a local attorney, you can help flush some of that out. Especially a good attorney can ask you some of those questions about your business operation and this template to make the document now yours. Because again, a contract should be a living, breathing document, a document that you'll continue to evolve, make better, improve upon from each experience you have, good or bad. You can learn and add into it.
Agreed. So we're going to make sure to put all the links in the chat, but want to make sure, just to go over the challenge again, we want you to add a clause that we discussed today and get set up to send your virtual contracts, and follow us on Instagram. So check out the links and come back, post, tell us how you're doing, and we'll be watching and giving away the free lifetime free and the free download for you.
Wonderful. We thank you for coming on with us and for doing this deep dive on contracts. David and I have the mentorship community, as well as our David Tutera Experience community, and just our general following that I know benefit from this conversation. It's something that I know you're very passionate about. You speak about it often, of elevating the industry and just seeing everyone be able to thrive and succeed together.
So we thank you for being part of this challenge today, and enjoy the important information that's been shared today. Again, it's so important what you've heard today, so don't take it lightly, take it seriously. And again, I'll just piggyback on, we welcome you to join us at any time when we're doing a David Tutera Experience, which is 3 days of education. Can you imagine 3 solid days of education with the two of us and all of the other educators? You should leave and go home, and you should feel like a hero by the time you leave DTE. Our mentorship program.
Do you officially announce where it's at?
It's up to you.
Announce where it's at.
All right. So we are going to be at the Ritz-Carlton, Cayman Islands, on the dates of September 18th, 19th, and 20th. And we welcome any of you to join us for what will change your life, by the way. At the beginning of when you were signing up to wait for our challenge today, those videos you were watching were all part of DTE. All of them were DTE experiences. And as I say, it's like going to school and it's like going to church.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
And we look forward to continuing seeing you on future challenges and future experiences. Thank you so much. And go charge a lot of money and make a lot of money and sign those contracts. Go out there and do it now. Make us proud and make this industry big.